Okay, so let me just turn this down a second, watching some shit. Um, right, I don't even know where to start. I honestly don't even know where to start with this. There are, should we start with the FK twigs? We'll start there. Oh, God. Oh, my God. It is beyond disturbing. We'll go with the full analyses that I've done down here. Then, of course, you have the Britney Spears thing. And then, of course, at Marilyn Manson, you have, oh my God, just the creepiest contextualizations, if any. Oh, I can't tell you. So we are horrified, and I mean horrified, at the ill contextualization of this article. And just below it says, let's see, after dating Twilight's Rob Patterson, FK Twigs reveals why his fan base was so difficult to deal with. So here we're going to get into it. The article is highly, highly misogynistic towards other women, and it's propaganda. It is inciting racism, whether it's going to admit it or not, which it is, by way of systemic tunnel visions. It is abusive towards Patterson's ex-girlfriend Stewart to current girlfriend Waterhouse, which it absolutely is. It is implying rampant, normalized, on-the-ground racism to a point implicating daily male racism, like, not the newspaper, like daily male, day-to-day, men, by covering up Patterson's key demographic and fan base at this time when they were dating, which was in fact a minority fan base. The demographic Patterson least appealed to was straight male and straight young boys. It is ignoring cultural trending of consumerist behaviors towards these women. For example, Stewart was likened to a drugged rat online and worse. We could do a long list of the things that Kristen Stewart at 17, 18, no less, had to endure, such as hate groups online, being called "you're not a girl's girl, you've got resting bitch face, you don't smile," and this was by a minority group, Perez Hilton fan base. Of course, this is not racial slurring in terms of likening Stewart to a rat. Of course not. However, it speaks to motive of online abuse, especially when recurrent trendings of consumerist behavior are evident, meaning that this was done to all three of Rob Patterson's girlfriends. Accurate contextualization of these issues are key to dismantling racist subculture, identifying racist subculture first, and then, of course, sexist and patriarchal subcultures. And this has been grossly ill-assessed, confused even with each other. Indeed promoting racism and sexism on the backhand, whether it will admit it or not. When you don't diagnose, I say diagnose, but when you don't assess the motive and situation and the actual subculture properly, you will usually exacerbate it and usually have huge, backlash. The cultural idolization of every one of Patterson's girlfriends by said fanbase has occurred, following the fanbase's deep resentments towards that cultural idolization. So once again, the cultural idolization, romantic female cultural idolization of every one of Patterson's girlfriends by said fanbase, minority fanbase, has occurred, following the fanbase's deep resentments towards that cultural idolization. This is exactly what Britney Spears went through, and they've tried to say that it's men. They've tried to do that in terms of the consumerist aspect of it. Then there is the consequential consumers tearing down. So Britney Spears actually was quite masculine as well, just to add this in here. She had Michael Jackson kind of moves and so on. And it was hypersexualized. Everything was hypersexualized, including boy bands and so on. Then there is the consequential consumers tearing down of the cultural ideal. This has happened with every single one of Patterson's girlfriends, not just FK Twigs. Indeed, Stewart received the worst online abuse and was also younger. Waterhouse was called boring looking, not talented, not special enough, white privileged. That Twigs implies otherwise, using her mixed race heritage and then the systemic blinds to do so, is highly irresponsible and very manipulative in dealing with the most serious oppressions known to man and womankind, and indeed the horror of what we saw with George Floyd, and then trivializing that to Perez Hilton. They're really, and basically romantic pangs, wants, and so on. There has been a serious mixing of personal motive by way of systemic tunnel visions. When Twigs Then Twigs using police brutality to imply type racial systemic white idealizations that ultimately broke up her and Patterson's relationship, and implying that, wow, that was unbelievable. I think for what it attacked, it certainly was a racist issue, and how, likening her to a monkey, that's absolutely racism, but it is not racist in motive. Nope. It is misogynistic, pitting women against each other for the male hand. Indeed, if systemic attitudes were so stacked against her, why did all three receive absurdist online abuse attacking every aspect of them, for what is obviously the same consumerist motive? Why was Patterson attracted to Twigs in the first place? Because according to the millennial systemic analyses that she has done, he shouldn't have been, due to those white attitudes, let alone having a long-term relationship with her, let alone a near engagement. And that would never be just put down on someone being a dancer or being very or exceptionally talented. I totally disagree with that. Because according to millennial systemic analyses, he shouldn't have been let alone, have a long-term relationship. Furthermore, why did Twigs undergo the same, and this is the key here, furthermore, why did Twigs undergo the same female cultural romantic idolization as the other two women, which she did? Her mixed race should have prevented this idolization if it was a racist systems and consumer base and everything. Yet it didn't. It didn't. Considering the systemic biases of white attitude and physical idealisms, her mixed race should have stopped it. My white friend at the time as well, a female, said, I think Twigs is so beautiful. I remember sitting next to her, she said this, I wish I looked like her. I think she's just perfect looking. That coming from a white female consumer. I was there, I heard her say these words, which again indicates the female cultural idolization occurring, as it does with the other two and as it did with the first. Personally, I do not use my lack of meeting pie beauty ideals, because I do not meet pie, despite me being white, but I don't really meet it. I don't use my lack of meeting pie beauty ideals, the cultural hazings and punishments of that throughout parts of my life, to then say that I deserve to be with the most desirable man or woman as those same ideals dictate. Granted, I understand this is in no way a comparison, to past black oppressions. Of course not. Like, ugly people are the same thing. Simply to say that you don't reduce such serious matters and systemic issue to that of the Jeremy Kyle urges and wants. Looking closer then at F.K. Twigs's motive. She has argued that Patterson broke up with her due to systemic bias of white attitude, white cultural idealisms of the white prince and being with the white princess, and white privilege, and to the exclusion of anything outside of that, or in spite of systemic influence. This was more than implied, and said that basically this is why they broke up. In which case, by that same millennial analysis that she herself has done, is it not fair to argue that Twigs has suffered that same systemic brainwashing in aspiring to be with a white pie male pretty boy, trained to be attracted to these white male physical idealisms as opposed to that of black? And one could argue that she has done a terrible disservice to her black male counterpart in not seeing past systemic influence, in not valuing his ethnic or racial physical features, and thereby not giving him representation in her public platform. Indeed, that all of her famous partnerships have been with white men. Not to insist on racial segregation romantically, but that both black physical ideals of male and women should be more positively platformed and highlighted within white culture and society, and it goes both ways, right? So it can be argued, as she argues in Patterson's and Waterhouse's case, that she joined Patterson due to systemic bias and systemic cultural dictatorships, that she values his physical features above that of black man's, brainwashed to think it was love. Is that not an argument? It can go both ways. So basically, if there was any romantic or non-systemic component, that of the organic childhood, whatever, upbringings, any other compatibility, this has been completely ignored. I hope this might highlight the dehumanizing catch-22s when suffering with systemic tunnel visions, as opposed to systemic blinds, further highlighting how things are being assessed and excuse me, and contextualize today post 2020. And then you compare that analysis that she's done to all of these other cases as well.